and an addiction, could be quite radical. But many people, may think the opposite as well, and that's just following on that idea of that bringing young people in early could actually be a safer and more effective way to tackle it. So there's lots to think about there.
Harm reduction, yeah, I think that's what we call it. For me, the standout session was really about improving road safety. That was really surprising. Those numbers are shocking. One adolescent in youth death every 2 minutes around the world, that
Yeah.
is completely unacceptable. But please keep engaging on social media. We'd like to hear your thoughts, your perspectives, and your ideas in terms of how you're finding the respective sessions. Use the hashtag 1.8, that's 1POINT8, across all social media platforms, and we'll be following all streams, really trying to keep track of what you're saying, what you're liking, and what you want to see more of during the course of today.
That's right. I'm so excited for the rest of the sessions. And I'm about to tell everybody what a couple of the next sessions that are coming up are. So now for our core session, that's this morning. One is about resilience and one is about investment. Now, the first one is called If Only You Would Listen, a conversation between adolescents and global experts on building resilience in an uncertain world. The second is called Invest We Must. The time is now, making the case for adolescent well-being. And well, I think that title says it all.
I'm really loving the sense of urgency in all of these titles. They're very timeless. Now we have some great content for you, and we hope you'll enjoy listening to the wonderful poet, Sammy Rhymes, who performed recently at the legendary Glastonbury Festival. She's performing the 1.8 billion campaign poem, and she is definitely going to blow you away with this poem. And then we have some excellent pieces of content from incredible events from the African continent. So we're heading to Ghana and Zimbabwe. See you in an hour.
Great to be here. I just want to give a big shout out to the White Ribbon Alliance for having me here. So I'm here to share a poem today, capturing the voices of 1.8 billion young people out here today. They've got a lot to say, and I just wanted to capture that peacefully through a protest through this poem. And it's called 1.8 billion Strong, simply because their voices are powerful, and I really hope I capture this through this poem. So here goes. A young mother in the camps told me they only turn the lights on twice a day. Once at dawn when they get up to pray, and once towards the end of the day. An opportunity to put the darkness away, tackle the suicidal thoughts and put the trauma at bay. The children didn't have too much to say, other than the fact that they're grateful for being able to break fast every day, walk to school and back home to play. They say they know these hard times aren't here to stay, and that they are going to make changes one day soon, as soon as they make room at the table and start to listen. The people in charge have long been abusers of power that's given. It's only the same power cuts can be applied to corruptors embedded in the system. The first task of any leader or politician is to ask, and the second is to listen. We want transparency on the hidden, everything from the cost of living to the cost of giving, because too many are living below the line. Many say they are okay, but they are not fine. Physically unwell and mentally in decline, and even in these times, our girls are undermined and marginalized. Education's been cast aside for 12 million worldwide underage brides who are forced to loosen up when things are tight and tight because money is tight. Considered a burden, sold off or sterilized by surgeons through coercion, captured and moved from rural to urban, sold to a man more than twice her age, understandably full of rage but silence, living cage but bearing the brunt of violence, becoming stock during climate shocks and health epidemics, lacking access to menstrual products, prescribed pills and medics, going through pandemic after pandemic, and life is far from epic for those who only venture out to shore, an adventure where mother and child remain unsure of destination, passing ports only to be captured by immigration, fleeing from famine and war-torn nations, seeking freedom from oppressive obligations enforced by leaders running corrupt corporations. Many want to lead, but very few successfully do it without meeting an axe or a bullet, assassinated from close range for bringing about change. And if things are to change globally, we need to openly converse with the youth and consult them when we set goals, for they are currently left out in the cold and underrepresented in polls, governed by souls with self-serving goals. We need to involve more more Malalas and Gretas. Have policies shaped and led by Gen Z, for they are the generation of go-getters. In this rat race, they are the pace setters, running around trying to make the world better. And those in power should know better but to turn them away. Let them have their say, for they are the voice of tomorrow and the voice of today. 1.8 billion strong, with opinions of what's right and what's wrong. Powerful voices. They want consent and childbirth choices. They are tired of being raped, trafficked and exploited, often ignored and undervalued. Despite bringing so much value, they demand inclusion, equitable distribution, and push for the evolution of environmental friendly, sustainable solutions. But we need a fusion of experienced allies and young advocates to collaborate and find these solutions. We are 1.8 billion strong, with opinions of what's right and what's wrong. We have tactics and we have tongues. Don't dismiss us because we're young. Let us unite, rise and lead. Let us plant the seed, for there is nothing about us without us. Listen to our plea. Thank you.
Oh, Sammy, thank you so much. Gosh.
The internet is the invention of our lifetime. It's the thing we turn to for the answers to almost anything. Now, imagine not having it. Around the world, mobile phones are bringing people closer to being connected. But the truth is, not everyone can afford the data bills, especially those in hard-to-reach areas. There's a big gap, and the Internet of Good Things is working hard to bridge it, bringing locally relevant, life-saving information and educational content closer to the people and communities who need it most, for free. And it's working. The Internet of Good Things is helping parents in the poorest and most remote areas provide the best care for their children. It's empowering young people to understand and defend their rights. In emergencies, it's a valuable source of real-time information, and around the world, it's providing a voice to the community. Through partnerships, the Internet of Good Things has the potential to reach 1 billion people. But to close all the gaps, we need to build a lot more bridges. With more people on board, more communities can be connected, and more lives will be changed. Internet of Good Things. Live better today.
Good day, everyone, and welcome to the National Youth Forum on Adolescent Health and Wellbeing. This is one of over 100 national events leading up to the Global Forum. The goal of the Global Forum is to make sure the world takes us seriously and that our well-being and health are a priority. Working with mobilizers to hear what the young people want through the 1.8 billion campaign, our leaders must address these issues.
And to improve my well-being, I want the government of Ghana to reduce all the taxes imposed on sanitary pads to allow all girls to be able to access it.
And to improve upon my well-being, I would like more police stations to be set in the rural and urban areas to help create a safe environment for girls. Thank you.
To improve my well-being, I'm pushing for there to be better roads for our young people to be on. Thank you.
To improve my well-being, I want to live in a community which provides me with a housing system where I feel safe and secure.
As part of my well-being, I would like there to be more affordable, accessible, and more friendly healthcare services, especially for young people in Ghana.
We are from Zimbabwe. We are part of the 1.8 billion voices of young people.
Hey yo, what's up? My name is Leon Tinasha Mateo, all the way from Zimbabwe. As young people in Zimbabwe, we dream of a country that includes all young people in all its decisions, because anything without the total involvement of youth is not for youth. Thank you.
Hi guys, my name is Diana Manditsera. According to the Constitution of Zimbabwe, we have the right to help you. But, however, how can I have the right to help you without water, without sanitation, Month by month, I face challenges, especially when I'm on my menstrual cycle. So, as individuals and community and the government at large, it is our responsibility to ensure that there is good water and sanitation.
Hello, everyone joining us for this session from all around the world. My name is Lakisha Burnwal. I am 14 and I live in Mumbai, India. I'm currently in the ninth grade and I'm eager to find my passion through exploring new skills. I'm currently interested in helping people to change their mindsets for the better and learning about people's behavior and ideologies. I like to read books, write, draw, and learn about animals.
Yes, a warm welcome to everyone joining in this session on adolescence and resilience. My name is Ridhima Jain. I'm 17. I live in Chandigarh, India. I'm in my freshman year majoring in public administration, geography, and French. I'm passionate about human psychology and believe that everyone should have access to mental health resources and no shame or stigma must be associated with mental health disorders. We both are also members of the advisory board of Teenbook, India's first digital life skills resource hub.
And today we are here to moderate and provide adolescent voices to this conversation about life skill, which might be critical for adolescents in an increasingly uncertain world. But before we talk about this life skill, it's important to ask what has made our world increasingly uncertain. As we build up the conversation, we would like you in the audience to also think along with us. So, on the chat box running with our session right now, there is a link to two poll questions. The first is: what are the greatest global challenges presently facing adolescents? The second is: what capacities and skills are needed to help overcome the challenges they
This
face? So,
son
please
necesarias
respond
para
to our poll questions and join in the conversation.
So, what has made our world increasingly uncertain? Well, the COVID 19 pandemic has, no doubt, been one of the biggest global challenges of the century. The pandemic affected everyone, but for adolescents, it brought challenges that even their parents had never faced before. Schools were shut down all around the world, education came to a grinding halt, and all of us struggled with the health of our loved ones.
That's right. But even as the pandemic ended, all around the world, there's other challenges that prevent adolescents from reaching their potential and dreams. Climate issues like drought and floods, unemployment and poverty, mental health, substance abuse, domestic violence, early marriage, and underage pregnancy. These are just a few of the many crises that impact adolescents every day around the world. To help build a better world for the next generation, it's important to equip adolescents with tools that will help them deal with such crises. And today in this session, we'll talk about one such tool: resilience.
Research shows that promoting resilience helps adolescents survive and thrive. For example, programs such as economic support, supportive parenting for adolescents, access to safe schools, and life skills can help adolescents safely transition to adulthood. Today, We'll explore this topic with 4 experts who are joining us today to tell us what we can do to promote resilience among young people, enhance their agency and bodily autonomy, and help build brighter futures for young people.
But first, let's hear from young people in rural India about the challenges that they have faced in their journey towards adulthood and what they think are the priority areas for help in order for them to cope with any future shocks.
मेरे ख्याल से अभी के टाइम में अगर देखा जाए तो जो सबसे बड़ी चुनौती है वो बेरोजगारी है। पिछले 5 वर्षों में सबसे बड़ी महामारी कोविड-19 है।
पिछले 5 वर्षों में बाढ़ तथा सूखा एक बहुत बड़ी समस्या रही है।
हमारी तरफ बाढ़ की बहुत ज़्यादा समस्या है जिसका मेन प्रभाव हमारी शिक्षा पे पड़ता है।
इन 5 सालों में सबसे पहले तो हमारा शारीरिक विकास किया, जो हमारे मानसिक शारीरिक पे प्रभाव पड़ा, सबसे ज़्यादा हम पे प्रभाव पड़ा क्योंकि ये हमारे शरीर में बदलाव आ रहे थे तो हमें उसका पता नहीं चल रहा था। जैसे में पीरियड्स ये शुरू में आया तो फिर बहुत सारा घबराहट हुआ।
मेरे ख्याल से पिछले 5 वर्षों में बढ़ती महंगाई एक बहुत बड़ी समस्या रह चुकी है।
कोविड के टाइम पे बहुत ज़्यादा लड़कियों का बाल विवाह किया गया है जो कि मेरे ऊपर भी प्रभाव पड़ रहा था।
युवाओं को तो बेरोजगारी की समस्या बहुत ज़्यादा प्रभावित किया है।
पिछले वर्ष कम वर्षा होने के कारण मेरे खेतों में जितना उपज होना चाहिए था उससे लगभग आधा हुआ, चूँकि मेरा परिवार खेती पर ही निर्भर है और यहाँ आर्थिक तंगी का माहौल उत्पन्न हो गया जिससे मेरे पढ़ाई पर भी प्रभाव पड़ा। जैसे कोचिंग में फीस न देने के कारण मुझे निकाल दिया गया।
लॉकडाउन के कारण बहुत सारे लोगों का रोजगार चला गया।
मेरे परिवार पे तो बहुत ज़्यादा प्रभावित किया है क्योंकि भैया दीदी ग्रेजुएशन करके बैठे हुए हैं लोग 3-4 साल से और सरकारी जॉब के लिए तैयारी भी कर रहे हैं लोग, बट कोई जॉब मिल नहीं रहा है।
बाढ़ के कारण हमारे स्कूल के चारों तरफ पानी भर जाता है, स्कूल में भी पानी भर जाता है, स्कूल के सारे जितने भी रास्ते हैं सारे पानी से भर जाते हैं, जिसके कारण शिक्षक भी स्कूल नहीं आते हैं और हम छात्रों को भी हमारे घर वाले नहीं जाने देते हैं क्योंकि अगर हम जाएंगे तो हमें उसी पानी के रास्ते से होकर जाना पड़ेगा, जिनके कारण हमारे पैरों में पानी लगने से बीमारियां हो जाती हैं।
बेरोजगारी से किसी भी व्यक्ति में हताश और हीन की भावना भर जाती है। जो बेरोजगार व्यक्ति रहता है वह अपने परिवार पर आर्थिक रूप से एक भार बन जाता है।
मिल नहीं पाया है हम लोगों को सरकारी सुविधा, बस एक राशन था उसमें छूट थी कि पैसा नहीं लग रहा था, वो राशन आप उठा सकते हो, लेकिन बाकी किसी तरीके का कोई सहायता नहीं मिल पाया हम लोग।
अगर हम किशोरों और स्टूडेंट्स की बात करें तो उन्हें भी सरकार ने सहायता की है, जैसे कि स्टूडेंट क्रेडिट कार्ड। स्टूडेंट क्रेडिट कार्ड एक ऐसी स्कीम है जिसमें बच्चों को उनके आगे की पढ़ाई के लिए सरकार 4 लाख रुपए की लोन देती है। लोन
टेंथ करने के बाद 10,000, इंटर करने के बाद 25,000।
नहीं, वित्तीय सहायता तो नहीं मिली है, बट स्टूडेंट क्रेडिट कार्ड है स्टूडेंट के लिए, उस पर लोन मिल जाती है कोई कोर्स करने के लिए।
12वीं और ग्रेजुएशन के बाद सरकार आपको आगे पढ़ने के लिए कुछ पैसे देती है जो कि समय खत्म होने पर वह आपको इंटरेस्ट के साथ वापस ले लेती है, तो वो हम मदद नहीं कर सकते। वो एक तरीके से उधार होगा जो कि लोन होगा जो कि हम लोग इंटरेस्ट पर ही देते हैं।
उद्यमिता पर ध्यान देना चाहिए, मतलब स्वयं से अपना रोजगार सृजन करना चाहिए।
अपने परिवार के मतलब पालन पोषण के लिए खुद से ही अपना जो है इकोनॉमिक डेवलप करें।
गरीबों और गरीब युवाओं के लिए सरकार को कोई विशेष नियम बनाना चाहिए जिससे उन युवाओं की बढ़ती महंगाई से शिक्षा बाधित ना हो और उनका अर्थव्यवस्था भी सही रहे।
सबसे पहले तो हम चाहेंगे कि हमें ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा अपने बारे में बताया जाए, हमारे शारीरिक स्वास्थ्य के बारे में बताया जाए, पीरियड्स के बारे में बताया जाए, कुछ एजुकेशन पे भी बताया जाए और भी हमें बहुत सारी सलाह दी जाए, इससे हमें काफ़ी अच्छा लगेगा।
कहीं पानी ही लगा रहेगा तो लोग कैसे जा पाएंगे, तो इसके लिए मेन सरकार को नाव जैसी चीज़ों का प्रबंध करना चाहिए जिससे उन्हें स्कूल जाने में सहायता हो, और बाकी वो तटबंधों का इंतजाम करे जिससे पानी की समस्या ही ना हो हमारे गांव में।
युवाओं के लिए सरकार को कोई टेक्निकल जॉब लाना चाहिए या आपको लोन वगैरह रोजगार के लिए सस्ता लोन देना चाहिए।
सरकार को स्किल डेवलपमेंट करना जरूरी है। इसके लिए सरकार को हर जगह मतलब कि ब्लॉक के पंचायत में टेक्निकल पढ़ाई की स्थापना करनी चाहिए।
हमारे पेरेंट्स के साथ में कुछ इस तरीके का बातचीत करना चाहिए ताकि बच्चों पे वो उस तरीके का थोपे ना, जैसे समय के अनुसार वो बदले ना।
These 5 minutes have told us that there is much to be done and many challenges to be tackled. So what can be done? To find some answers, let's now turn to our expert panel.
Today we have with us Dr. Rachel Yates, who is the policy and advocacy leader working with the Accelerate Hub led by the University of Cape Town in South Africa and University of Oxford in the UK. Through her work with the Accelerate Hub, she works with an amazing team of early career researchers from across the globe. Before joining the Hub, Rachel has worked with civil society, UNICEF, and the UK government, focusing on ending poverty and gender inequalities. Hi, Rachel.
We also have with us Jennifer Yablonsky. Jen works as the Child Poverty and Social Protection Chief for UNICEF in New York. She has worked on issues of social inclusion, inequality, and economic justice for over 23 years. She brings applied knowledge of poverty and economic analysis and extensive experience working on social protection systems and programs in developing countries, including humanitarian contexts. Hello, Jen.
Also joining us today is Jeffrey Sabino. Jeffrey is a youth activist from Honduras and is currently studying law at the National Autonomous University of Honduras, UNAH. Jeffrey has considerable expertise in human rights, including LGBTQ rights, sexual and reproductive rights, and youth political engagement. Jeffries also volunteered at Foundation Yahweh's and other civil society organizations advocating for sexual diversity and rights. He's co-founded the Sexual Diversity University Collective to promote inclusivity in academia. Hello, Jeffrey.
Last but not the least, we have Silinga Nisiwe Zumbunu. Silinga is a quantitative social scientist and demographer at the University of Cape Town. Her research tries to understand how adolescent empowerment shapes sexual and reproductive health among African adolescents, including ending child marriages, improving access to sexual and reproductive health services, and education. Hi, Silinga.
A very warm welcome to our guest panel. We look forward to hearing your insight on the challenges that adolescents face and how building resilience and agency among youth can help them overcome some of these challenges. So let's start with you, Jeffrey. Can you please explain what resilience is and what would it specifically mean for adolescents? And if possible, please share with an example.
Por preguntarlo, Kisha. Al abordar el concepto de resiliencia, es esencial reconocer su
Thank you for
importancia,
asking. When we approach the concept of resilience, it's very important to recognize its importance, especially for the youth. We can define it as a capacity that allows individuals to face adversities. so in order to achieve their targets and goals. This is strengthened with time and experience. When many of us, adolescents and youth, find ourselves under pressure, we can see our life full of changes, internal and external, as well as a variety of challenges that can often seem unbearable. This encompasses emotional and psychological transformation, academic pressures, peer-to-peer relations, identity formation, and more. It's a period of self-discovery and growth, but it's also a time for many changes and challenges. In this context, resilience gives us important skills. It allows us to not just taking about moving forward, but face difficulties and thriving with them. It instills the ability to adapt, persevere, and find constructive solutions for the challenges. It also fosters the development of the ability to take action, rely on ourselves that we can face the change. For instance, when we talk about access to education, maybe many of us do not understand consciously the concept of what it is and how to develop resilience. There are also those youth that do not have access to the education and therefore have no resources to face the challenges effectively. We can think about educational centers which curricula talk about that and have a more realistic approach to the youth. And I finish with this. As we expect a lot from the youth because we are considered the future, we are actually the present. We need and want access to education. We need open communication and emotional support within families, and also empower youth to engage to complex issues of the world. We don't have to wait till we are adults to make that. It is important to develop these skills from early adolescence. Thank you.
What really chimed with me was the fact that everyone keeps talking about us as the future, while we are right here. I agree, we don't want to wait until we're adults to develop the skills we need. We need them now. Let us now come to you, Salinga. Can you help us understand the concept of agency with an example? What role does agency play in developing resilience?
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Redima. Okay, so let's start with maybe defining what agency means. To me, agency refers to an individual's ability to make choices or decisions about their life and taking the necessary steps they need to achieve their desired goals. So these include making decisions about education, career aspirations. Then in terms of sexual relationships, which emerge during the adolescence stage, for most people, it includes deciding as well, when would you like to get married, with whom would you like to marry, and when do you want to have children, if you desire to have children, and what type of contraception would you like to use. So then using an example that is broad, I would like to take us back to the COVID-19 pandemic. So agents played a big role in developing resilience during the pandemic. For example, when schools moved to remote learning, there were a lot of challenges that came with that. A lot of students didn't have access to the internet. Others didn't have access to school materials like textbooks, and then just the isolation that came with it. Not being in contact with your peers and teachers. So agency played a role for students to make choices as they have to decide for themselves, like, and take actions that influence their educational circumstances. These include making choices about developing study routines at home and setting study goals, finding online resources to supplement the usual educational material, and then seeking support from family members. So in summary, I would say agency plays a crucial role in developing resilience, and as it builds an individual's self-confidence, it helps with develop problem-solving skills, promotes taking personal responsibility of one's action, and aids in setting and achieving goals. So these various aspects of agency are necessary when navigating the challenges of life and building resilience in general. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Selinga. So we can see that agency is the skill of taking charge of our own lives through the choices and decisions we make. Is that right? So it's an ability that centers around taking an initiative to pursue our goals, being in control of our decisions, and basically taking responsibility for the outcome of the decisions that we make. But I'm wondering, and now let me ask you this, Rachel, is it possible to develop meaningful agency among adolescents while they're still financially and emotionally dependent on adults?
Thanks, Lakeisha. That's a really interesting question. Now, as I'm sure you're well aware, that adolescence can be an extremely exciting time, but sometimes it's also quite a terrifying time in life. It's a time where there's a lot of changes going on in our bodies, in our minds, and in our relationships with others, particularly the adults in our lives, whether they're parents or other caregivers or teachers. And when we're adolescents, there are a lot of changes going on in our brains, which pushes us to experiment, try new things, and at times take risks. And this can be challenging, but it also is a time when we also learn a lot and test who we want to be as adults. And this change also affects the way that we relate to others, including our adult caregivers. So really, what I'd like to say is that in developing agency and resilience, adolescents do need to spread their wings and experiment, but this doesn't happen by doing it alone and without any support. And for positive transitions to adulthood, these changes really need to happen in a sort of safe and positive way. And adolescents do need some safety nets, whether these are physical or emotional safety nets. And I should really stress that financial safety nets are critical to adolescents, particularly those living in poverty, as that can also drive them into behaviours which are like risky sexual behaviours and early marriage. So financial safety nets are really important. So really, you know, it is important when thinking about supporting people's agency to think about these critical relationships in young people's lives, and to make sure that, you know, both adolescents and caregivers have the right tools and support to keep young people both financially and emotionally safe, and to ensure that adolescents can enter adulthood with the best skills and capabilities for the future. And I'll say a bit more about this in the next round of questions.
Thank you, Rachel. You really understand adolescent brains so well. I really like the concept of entering adulthood with the right set of skills. Jen, I would like to bring you in here and ask you about the financial support that is needed to support adolescents and their caregivers. Can you expand on the topic of economic security and explain it with an example? Also, would the governments and NGOs have the money to make all needy adolescents financially secure?
Great, thanks, Radima. And actually, Rachel's last point about financial safety, I think, is a good transition into this topic. I think it's really important to underline that economic security is actually a fundamental human right for all people, right? For adolescents, for their caregivers and families. And it's important as a right in itself, but also because it helps ensure other rights. Before really talking about what economic security is and what we might do about it, I wanted to talk about why it's so important to our conversation today, and linking to some of the points many of you have already made, which is, you know, adolescents, and particularly adolescent girls, and almost every context face tremendous barriers, many of which we've talked about already. Poverty, lack of financial inclusion, health, bodily autonomy. And just to give a couple of numbers I think are useful, that globally almost double the number of adolescent girls between the ages of 15 and 19 are not in any form of education, employment, or training compared to boys. And while we've made important gains in terms of primary education for girls, improving gender equity and parity in school learning, this parity is not widespread. And still, far too many adolescent girls and boys drop out of upper secondary school. And underpinning a lot, this is with a strong focus on the education aspect, underpinning many of the challenges we've talked about is financial insecurity, illiteracy, and exclusion, particularly for adolescent girls around the world. So I think then the question is, given these challenges, economic security means that adolescent girls and their families have the economic resources and stability, the kind of financial safety that Rachel was referring to, that allows them to access important services such as education, health, reproductive information, and resources for their development and security. In other words, that poverty or lack of sufficient economic resources don't stand in the way of what adolescents want to achieve and aspire to. One of the critical tools for ensuring people's economic security is social protection. These are public programs, for example, cash transfers, cash programs that link adolescents to services, social health insurance, that provide economic support and address some of these barriers that we were talking about earlier to social and economic well-being. As UNICEF, we support governments to establish these national systems that can be basically the baseline or underpin, I think, the kinds of economic and financial stability that allows or sort of enables in an easier way for adolescents to act on the agency that you guys were describing earlier. And just for an example, cash transfers in particular have been shown to be instrumental in ensuring, particularly for the poorest and most vulnerable children, who are often not visible, such as young girls, children living with disabilities, or in crisis contexts, or for instance, children that are in situations of migration, that they're actually able to attend school, right? By, for example, replacing or covering the costs for tuition, books, or uniforms, or replacing the need or avoiding a trade-off, for example, between going to work and going to school through child labor. And this helps to ensure that all children have access to inclusive education, especially adolescent girls.
Thank you, Jen. So economic security would essentially mean providing enough money and support to adolescents so that they can go to school, get health care, or fulfill other important needs of their lives in case their parents or caregivers are unable to provide them this support. It is very good to know that governments and groups like UNICEF are currently working on this, and this way, more adolescents, including adolescent girls, can have a chance towards a happy adulthood. So, now from economic security, I would like to now turn our attention to the importance of bodily autonomy, the lack of which is still a major roadblock to adolescent well-being in many parts of the world, including India, where we still have a very high number of teenage pregnancies. So, as per the National Families Health Survey of India, around 11.8 million teenage pregnancies occurred in India in 2016, and this number has only fallen down marginally in the latest data of 2021. So, Jeffrey, how would knowing about your body and freedom to make decisions around it help adolescents build resilience? Could you please explain with an example?
Gracias, Loquicha.
Parar y darnos un ejemplo.
Bueno,
Thank you,
yo creo
Lakeisha.
firmemente que el conocimiento es poder
Well,
y
I'm
conocer
a
bien nuestro
true
cuerpo nos
believer
permitirá
that
ser más sabios
knowledge
en las
and the
decisiones
power
que
to
tomemos.
know in our
Conocer los límites
bodies
de mi cuerpo
allow
me
us to
permitirá
be wiser in
identificar
our decisions.
qué
By
proyectos
knowing my
podría
body, I
realizar
can
y me hará
identify
entender que
what
no somos máquinas
projects I
indiscutibles,
can carry
porque
on
no
and
puedo realizar una
understand
tarea
that they
con
are not
éxito si mi cuerpo está
machines,
cansado
because
o enfermo.
I cannot
Además, a menudo
perform a
existe una
task
idea bastante
if my body is
simplista y
tired or
reduccionista
if
de que
I
los cuerpos
sick
joven
or if I don't know it. In addition, it's often a rather simplistic and reductionist idea of young bodies because of our genitalia and gender orientation. We are still multidimensional beings. So if youth are able to understand in a broader way their bodies, opportunities, and needs, understanding the body and having the freedom to make informed decisions is very important to foster resilience among adolescents. This connection between body awareness and resilience. When we talk about resilience, for instance, is when we recognize the importance of sexual and reproductive health, guaranteeing services for sex education, contraceptive methods, and testing for sexual transmitted diseases. This knowledge empower our decisions that should be based on knowledge. When we face a situation that requires access to sexual health services, we know where to go, be it a local clinic, healthcare provider, or trust hotline or online resource. And knowledge enables to act quickly, and it is especially important in the sensitive situations. And youth should understand that the body they live in are theirs, and we should approach this without fear or excitation. The sense of autonomy contributes to our emotional and mental resilience and navigate to delicate and difficult situations. In essence, knowing our body and being able to freely make decisions make us capable to face complexities of life, make good decisions, and avoid complexities, allowing to prevent setbacks and ultimately enabling pursuing our aspirations with confidence.
We now have spoken of several ways in which resilience and agency can be built for adolescents. Personally, I believe Jeffrey's point where he spoke about knowing one's body and having the freedom to make decisions about it is a power solution, through which young adolescents learn to make wise decisions, move on from tough times confidently, and gain determination to pursue aspirations.
Thanks, Ridhima. And I feel that support programs like those that UNICEF is working on, combined with elements of bringing bodily autonomy awareness, as Jeffrey had mentioned, would be very helpful, instrumental, I can say, in addressing the global challenges faced by adolescents. So now as we reach towards the end of our insightful session today, we have a question we would like to ask all of you. Rachel, can we please start with you? Besides financial support and development of agency, what are some other recommendations for adolescents to build their resilience? So what are your top tips to the adolescents that are listening in with us today?
Thanks so much. And I think for all of us who are working to support adolescent well-being, there's a paradox. We want to both ensure the creativity of young people at this stage in life and enabling them to explore new things, but at the same time keep each other safe. And this requires a sort of comprehensive package of support and services, including social protection that Jen's spoken about, youth-friendly health services, including mental health services, good quality education, and also good child protection services that can address violence and abuse. But it also requires support for at the family level, to supporting difficult intergenerational conversations and engagement between caregivers, parents, and adolescents themselves. And the World Health Organization, with UNICEF and networks like Parenting for Lifelong Health and the Global Parenting Initiative, have developed a set of resources to help adolescents and caregivers with information, skills, and support. And these programs can help those difficult conversations, promote confidence and agency, but also looking at ways of protecting young people from different forms of violence. The other thing that we haven't really spoken about is having programs that really support respectful relationships between boys and girls and challenging some of the harmful gender norms that can in particular hold girls back. We've heard from Jen about the importance of social protection and keeping girls in school in particular, and that social protection has a big role in this, whether through cash transfers or school feeding programs. And we know that access to school is a really important platform where young people can gain new skills and really help them to reach their full potential. We also know the importance of adolescent health services and how tough it is often for young people to access a clinic where they may be shouted at by caregivers. And having services that are both respectful, kind, and responsive to young people's needs are really important. And finally, we shouldn't forget about the adolescents who find themselves in the most challenging situations and the sorts of support that they need to become resilient and also to bounce back from adversity. And this includes young people living with HIV, adolescent mothers, and those who sort of marry early, and those particularly living in conflict and humanitarian settings. So really ensuring that no one is left behind. But I'll leave it there for now. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. I really loved the idea of parenting programs for both adolescents and caregivers. It's really something new. What do you think, Jen, about this?
Yeah, I wanted to say maybe a couple of things as we kind of move towards the closing. One is really to I think acknowledge, and this panel is a great example, right, that we know adolescent girls around the world, right, and boys are fighting for their rights every day, right? Whether that be sort of within their own lives or passing on what they have learned, you know, to other girls who are facing same situations, showing us how incredibly resilient and collaborative they are, right? So I think we should start there. I did want to come back briefly to the point about that adolescents can turn to social protection as a resource to help them build their resilience, right? Through just emphasizing and building on some of the points before, for example, by providing access to health insurance for sexual and reproductive health, linking into the bodily autonomy piece, as well as cash transfers covering basic needs from food and nutrition to menstrual hygiene to school tuition and fees, and the ability basically to flexibly choose what is the priority, right, in your lives. And I think in the context that Rachel was saying of kind of healthy relationships with the adults around you. And it can also be support kind of an economic on-ramp as adolescents make that transition, right, from school to work, getting and keeping in school, from a learning to earning pathway. And all of these things together build the resilience of adolescents, especially girls who may face more hurdles than boys in particular circumstances. But the one thing I do want to emphasize, particularly in a forum like this, is I think we also recognize that social protection programs need to be more responsive to the needs of girls and boys in order to be an instrument for them to build resilience. And for this reason, for example, UNICEF has launched with partners the We Deserve Better initiative to mobilize women and girls to make social protection more gender and age responsive to their needs by participatory policymaking, directly engaging with girls and women to give feedback about what are the priorities for them even within social protection, and really acknowledging that girls have a right to demand their ability to activate and be agents of their own potential. Thanks.
Thank you, Jen. It's definitely important for us to keep these economic and financial barriers in mind as well when thinking of solutions when we want to encourage adolescent agency and resilience. Because there's only so much I believe a young person is in control of, and social protection can definitely help cover resources that are crucial to survival and well-being so that young boys and girls can focus on building resilience at that time. So moving on to Selinga, what would be your top tips?
Okay, thank you, Lakeisha. So just to add to what the other panelists have already mentioned, my top tips to adolescents listening today will be, there is also a need from their side to engage in continuous learning that is outside the academic setting. So it can include a range of talents, maybe we get involved into some painting, some soft skill activities, communication and leadership. And as we can see that the world is becoming more digital every day. So engaging in technical and digital skills that can help you successfully navigate the modern world. As well as another key tip is to participate where possible in community activities, volunteering and community activities that involves identifying challenges like Lakeisha mentioned already. You are identifying some of the challenges in India, that child marriage is an issue. So having your voice heard, being an active participant in these conversations about challenges being faced by adolescents in your community, that's a very good thing. Then just to add to that as well, being involved in great supportive networks with peers and with mentors as well, to build great skills that are necessary to build resilience and navigate life in general. Thank you.
Thank you, Salinga. I acknowledge your point on lifelong learning. One can really gain from it. Jeffrey, what would you like to add as your topic?
Okay, gracias por preguntar.
Thank you for asking.
Creo que tenemos que aprender a escuchar nuestro cuerpo.
I believe we have to learn how to listen to our bodies and connect to it, see it as a territory that we have to constantly take care of and protect. We cannot take care of the world if you do not take care of our own bodies. Thank you.
Definitely agree. Our body should always come first. Now, we've accumulated a really rich pool of ideas today. We would really like to thank all of our panelists for the work that they are doing in the field of adolescence resilience, and hope that all the insights we have gathered today will feed into PMNCH's work in improving adolescent well-being.
Thank you also to the listeners who tuned into our session today. Hope you have shared your inputs via the poll link we shared on the chat. We also hope that you leave this session with a head full of ideas, and the implementation definitely will involve adolescents. Thank you for joining us today. We now bring this session to an end. Goodbye and good luck.